Hello everybody, this is Miss Karen here from the Montgomery County Norristown Public Library, and we are back with another fun painting activity for the week. So this week we are going to be painting the child from Disney Plus's The Mandalorian. If you guys haven't watched this show, this adorable little alien creature is just a little baby, and we think so far he seems to be the same species as the famous Yoda. So we're going to go ahead and recreate this fun, as we call him, Baby Yoda painting here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to want to draw on the canvas directly with the pencil, and we want to get that nice outline for Baby Yoda's shape. Now, it does not need to be perfect. You can see here in my example there are a lot of rounded brush strokes in the face and on his little furry cloak as well. So we're going to definitely be painting outside of the lines that we draw, but we just want to give ourselves a nice guide. So I already went ahead and painted my background on my canvas here just to make the video a little bit quicker, but I'm going to show you guys on a piece of paper here what you're going to need to draw for your outline. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're not going to be quite in the corners, but a little bit in on the sides, just like that. So you want to leave about an inch or so on each side, and that's where we're going to start with the edge of Baby Yoda's coat. So we're going to start at those two little dots on the side there, and we're going to draw just kind of a wavy line. There doesn't need to really be any rhyme or reason to this, but we just want it to be a little bit wavy, kind of random like that, because we want his coat to look nice and lumpy. So we're going to do it just like that, and then we're going to do again a little bit wavy, and we're going to have those meet there in the middle. And then from there, we're going to come straight out to the sides to make Baby Yoda's ears. You can see he has those big kind of bat-like ears, and they come straight out from the edge of the coat. So from the lines on either side, you're going to come straight out just like that onto both sides. And then up at the top at the point, you're going to bring those back in, just like that. All right, so we have his coat part down here. We have ear number 1, ear number 2. And now we're just going to go ahead and draw a curved line to connect those two together. So that doesn't look like much when you look at it right now, but like I said, we're going to be kind of painting over those lines, and eventually that will come together to make that good Baby Yoda shape there. So the next thing that you want to do once you have your outline is you want to go ahead and paint the color into your background. Now what I did in my example was I chose a nice dark purple to kind of look like the night sky. If you want to use the same color as me, of course you can, or you can pick whatever color you'd like. So if you want to have it look like the night sky, like I did with mine, you want to make sure you pick a darker color. So you can pick the purple that I used. You could use a black or a dark blue, but you could also choose maybe like a yellow or an orange if you want it to maybe look like the desert behind him where the show takes place, or you can just pick any color that you'd like to go along with that. All right, now the next thing I want to point out for this tutorial is we have been sending out some different paint sets. So this is the paint set that I'll be using here. Some of you guys might have a paint set that looks a little bit different and have some different colors, but you don't need to worry about that. You can always mix colors together to get it to look the way that you'd like. But the main colors that we're going to be using are going to be a black, green, white, and brown. Those are going to be the most important colors that we use today. So if you have the other painting set that has more colors with it, you want to make sure that you're using the lighter green. This paint set only has one, so we're going to be mixing that with some of the white. But like I said, you can use whatever colors you want for this, but those are going to be the main 4 colors that we're going to be using. All right, so we're going to start off, once you have your background painted and nice and dried, we're going to start off with the coat here on the bottom. So we're going to take a slightly bigger brush. I'm using one of my larger, flatter brushes. We're going to dip that into a brown paint. So if you have a paint set that has more than one color brown, we're going to want to use the darker brown on the bottom part. So you're going to take your brown, and we're going to just fill in this entire white space here at the bottom. So we're only painting up to that line that we drew across the middle there. All right. And this, again, does not need to look perfect, but you just want to make sure that you're painting on something like newspaper or magazine paper, something like that, to keep your surface from getting messy, because we are going to be painting right to the edge like that. All right, and you're going to want to use kind of a lot of paint for this spot. You can see I have quite a good amount of paint on my brush there, and that's because we're going to be mixing this brown paint with some black, some lighter colors. So you want to make sure it's nice and wet so that there's something for those colors to mix with. All right, so once you have all of that blank space filled in, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of either a darker brown if you have it, or black, and we're going to dip the same brush into the black. You can either have the black paint on a paper plate if you don't want to mix directly into your paint buckets, but you want to use the same brush, and we're just going to do a couple streaks like that, and we're just going to paint those in so that they start to blend in. So this is going to be a very random kind of painting where we're going to be mixing the colors on the canvas. So like I said before, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. You just want to have that nice effect of the kind of the lighter browns and the darker browns mixing together. So for the darker browns that we just mixed with the black there, we want to have that more on the bottom part of the canvas. And now what we're going to do is you're going to switch to your more rounded brush, like this one here. We're going to dip that into the white. Good. And now what we're going to do is on the top third of our brown, we're just going to do some dots just like this. So what we're doing is we're making this mix with the dark brown paint to make it lighter, but we're also giving it some texture. So our Baby Yoda has a collar up there at the top that's made of fur. So by dabbing at the paint with this rounder brush, we're giving it that texture that makes it look like it has some fur sticking up. Please excuse the announcement there. All right, so you're gonna keep going like that just across that top third of the painting. And again, don't worry about staying in those lines. We can either have that be some of the fur sticking up off the top of his collar, or we can also paint over that later with some of the green. All right. So we have our dots, and you're just going to go straight across just like that. And if you want to have it more blended looking, you can keep going a little bit further, but I'm going to leave mine so that you have those nice varying colors in there. You get some of the darker brown, some of the white, and the light brown in between. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of the smaller brushes, and this is another time when I would advise you to wait just about 5 minutes to let that paint dry a little. You'll notice as I'm painting that my colors will start to mix together. My lines might not be as clear, and that's just because my paint is still very wet. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a slightly smaller brush, and we're going to dip that into our black. And what we're going to do is we're going to start right at the edge here on the left where our fur collar meets with the brown of the coat. And we're going to draw a curved line going down across the bottom and up into the middle. So you can see it's a little bit difficult for me to get that black to show up because my paints are wet, excuse me. So if you want to avoid that, you can just wait for the paint to dry. All right, so we did the line going up the middle. Now we're going to start right at the edge of that line we just made and go all the way across the bottom over to the edge. So we have one curved line going straight up and one more line going straight across. So that's going to make it look like his collar is wrapped around his neck, so he's all nice and snug in his nice warm fur jacket there. All right, so this next part is going to be a little bit more difficult simply because we are going to be mixing some colors. Now, if you have a painting set where you have different shades of green, like I said before, you're going to want to make sure you use the lightest color green that you have, and if you think it still should be a little bit more bright, a little lighter than it is, you can follow along as we mix these colors together. So as I said, you can mix these colors together on something like a paper plate, or you can do what I'm doing where I'm mixing the colors directly into the pots here. So what I'm going to do for this, I'm going to use one of my bigger brushes. I'm going to actually dip this straight into the white paint and get a decent amount of white paint onto my brush. And now I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of this green. So you see I have mostly white paint on the brush with a little bit of green, and I'm going to paint that directly onto the canvas. And you can see there's a little bit of brown mixed in there. I think that was mixed in with my green. But you can see that it goes away very quickly. So we're getting a very, very light green, which is exactly what we want. So again, I'm going to go right into my white, which is mixed with a little bit of brown, but that's okay. Into the white with a little bit of green. And we're just going to keep going until all of the white space that we have left is covered here. And again, don't worry if your green starts to mix a little bit with your colors from your outside, your background color, or with the color down here from the collar. We are still going to go over this with a darker green on the bottom there, so all of those colors will mix together. So one more time, I'm getting a lot of white, a little bit of green, and we're just going to keep going. And these colors don't need to match perfectly on here either, because as you can see in my example here, our Baby Yoda does have quite a few different shades of green in there, so we're going to give him a little bit of dimension so it looks a little bit more realistic. We have those shadows on his cheeks and his chin, which gives it just like a little bit more depth and makes him look a little bit more lifelike. All right. So once you're all set with your green paint, you should have that nice light green across that canvas. You're going to want to go ahead and let that dry just a little bit, and then we're going to come back and do his ears. So in the paint set that I have a very, very, very light pink color over here. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and use. If you have a paint set that has a darker pink or just a red, you're going to want to go ahead and mix that with the white until you get this nice light pink color. So we're going to take that pink and we're just going to paint from the bottom corner of that ear all the way up to the top and paint that whole bottom section just like that. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Start at that bottom corner and paint all the way up to the tip just like that. So that's going to be the inside of his ear, which is going to be a nice pink. And again, my paints are still wet, so my color isn't showing up a whole lot, but that's okay. All right, so we just have that little touch of pink, and there we have the inside of the Baby Yoda ears, just like that. All right, now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and paint on Baby Yoda's eyes. Now for this part, you definitely do want to wait until your canvas is dry, especially this green part on his head. You might see in my example here, it's a little bit difficult to paint directly onto the wet paint, and we want those eyes to be nice and solid and dark. So once your paint is dry, you're going to dip another thinner brush into the black paint, but we're also going to take a little bit of brown. So you can see here in my brush, I have a lot of black, a little bit of brown. And we're going to pick 2 spots on either side of his face and start with just a curved line. So they're almost going to look like eyebrows at first. So just a curved line, and we just painted the top of his eyes. So now we're going to start at the corner and do another curved line coming down from the sides and complete that shape. So it's going to look almost like a football shape. I want those to be a little bit wider. Okay, so it should be a mix of that black and brown paint, and then we're going to go ahead and fill that shape in. Again, mine's a little bit odd looking just because my colors are mixing with that green, but if you wait for your paint to dry, you won't have that issue at all. So once those colors mix together, that should end up as a very, very dark brown color. All right, now we're going to give that a chance to dry because we need that to be perfectly dry before we go on to the next spot, which is going to be his pupil, which is going to be a very, very dark black. So we're going to give that a chance to dry, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to now paint that little bit of hair that Baby Yoda has at the top of his head. So you're just going to take a nice thin brush, dip that into your white, and you're going to start right at the top where his ear meets his head and just do some very, very light, small strokes of white paint going up. So you don't want to make them too big, especially at the very top of his head. We want those to be very small and thin and light. But we're just going to do that all the way across because he has that teeny little bit of hair, just like a real baby. All right, so you can do as much or as little as you'd like. I did a little bit more here than I did in my original example, but that's okay. So we have that hair on the top of the head. We have the shape of our eyes ready to go. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and paint those dark black pupils. So again, you might want to give it a little bit more time to dry than I have here. You'll probably see that it's going to be a little bit difficult to get this black to stay. So you want to make sure this whole area is nice and dry, but I'm going to go ahead to save some time. And we're just going to paint a circle in each eye, starting right at the top and then coming down into the center. So just a nice big circle. Okay, just like that. Alrighty. So the next thing we're going to do is take that brush that we used for the white paint. We're going to take that one back up. And again, you're going to want to wait for this to be very, very dry because we're going to put some white paint on top of this again. What we're going to do is add one stroke of white paint on the bottom part of each corner here. Okay. And then we're going to add 2 dots, one towards the middle, one towards the right. And then you're going to take one more big loop of paint and do a big circle right to the right side of that pupil. Okay, so we have our 2 big dots, 2 little dots, and one on the side as well. Okay, and that's just going to make his eyes look a little bit more realistic, like they're bright and glistening, reflecting the light. All right, so next comes the harder part of this project. What we're going to do is go ahead and do these brush strokes that kind of give his face some definition. So you can see in my example there, we can see where his eyelids are. We can see the shadows on his chin and his cheeks. We can see the center of his forehead. And on my example, you see it's still very flat. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to take that brush that we used to paint our Baby Yoda color, that green. And you can see in my pot here, my green is already mixed a little bit with the white. So we're going to do the opposite of what we did the first time. The first time we took a little bit of white and a lot of white and a little bit of green. This time we want to take a lot of green and a little bit of white. So I kind of already have that mixed in there, but you can mix it on a paper plate if you need to as well. So I have mostly green, excuse that announcement. So I have mostly green with a little bit of white. And what I'm going to do is start at the top corner here, right where the ear meets the head, and I'm just going to paint a little bit of a curve, just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. And I'm going to keep going over that over and over just to kind of blend it in a little bit more. Okay. And if you want to lighten that up a bit at all, you can always dip back into the white paint and go over it one more time. And that will lighten it up just a little bit. Okay, so now we're starting to get that nice definition where we can see where his head stops and his ears begin. And now we're going to go back into that dark paint, the dark green, and we're going to do one more loop here at the bottom, and that's going to make the cheek. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So we're coming out a little bit from the edge here. You can see his cheek kind of sticks out a little bit. Alrighty, so we come down like that. And again, if you want to lighten it up, you can add some more white paint. And now we're going to do the same thing, but right in the center, we're going to do one curved line coming down, and that's going to be his chin. So we have the curved line on the sides to be his cheeks. My colors are mixing a bit here. And then one curved line towards the bottom here to be his chin. So go ahead and get some more paint on your brush, and we're going to kind of connect those lines together. So I'm using mostly white here. And you can see I have a little bit of brown mixing into that color, but you really don't notice it. So if your colors start to mix, don't fret. You can just wait a little bit longer for those colors to dry on your canvas. All right, so we have kind of a darker outline around the edge of his head. So we can see his cheeks, we can see his chin, and we can see his head here. Now we're going to go ahead and take some more of that darker green paint, and right where the pink color of his ears meets the green, I'm just going to go ahead and paint a couple more darker green strokes, again to give that kind of definition where that separation happens. And then I'm going to go ahead and get some more white and repaint over those ears. So now those ears look a little bit darker and more blended than they did before. Okay, so we have the ears done, we have our cheeks and our chin. Next, we're gonna go ahead and paint right above his eyes where those eyelids would be. So for this one, you're gonna wanna get mostly white paint on your brush because you already have some green on there. This is gonna be the lightest part of his face where those highlights are. So I'm just gonna paint directly above. And my colors are mixing a little bit just because my black paint is not dry on his eyes. But you wanna go in a circular motion and outline the top of those eyes on both sides. So they almost look like eyebrows if they're light enough. But what we really want is just to get the direction of that paint in there to give it that nice highlight. And then you're gonna take a little bit more white paint on your brush and just do one smudge right there in the center. If you can see that on the canvas there, and that's gonna end up being his nose. Okay, so while you have that excess paint, you're just gonna fill in the rest of his face here and blend the cheeks and the chin in with the rest of the canvas. You can see how all of my colors are starting to mix together. And then whenever you're going near his eyes, you just want to follow the shape of his eyes and go in and around. Okay? Now the next thing we're going to do is take some more of that dark green paint, and we're going to do that little definition there in the center of his forehead to show where those creases are. So you can take either just the dark green paint, or you can also take a little bit of black as well, depending on how dark you'd like it. And coming out from that smudge there where we painted his nose, we're just going to make two curved lines coming up. Just like that. And again, you want to go over those a couple of different times. And you can see the more I paint over it, the more it blends in with the rest of the canvas. And if you have some excess, you can always go over those darker spots. Okay. Okay, now all we have left to do on the face is just to do his mouth and his nose. So you can go ahead and either use the brush that you used for the black of his eyes, or if you have another small thin brush, go ahead and dip that into the black paint. So for his smile, we're going to start right under his left eye, and we're going to go down, and up. So you can go over that a few times if you need to with the black paint. All right. Sorry, one more announcement, guys. Okay, so there's his smile, and now we're going to go over that little white spot that you painted for his nose. You're just going to paint two curved lines on the outside of that, just like that, and you want them to try to be the same length. And then we're going to paint a little smudge right on the outside, and that's going to be his little nostril, okay? All right, so we have our baby Yoda face done, and now the only thing left to do, if you would like, is to just take one of your smaller brushes, take some white paint, and we'll just make some dots around the side here. So you don't want to do them too close together. You want to spread them out a little bit more because we want this to look like the night sky rather than falling snow. So if you chose that darker color and you wanted to do the night sky, nice and easy. Or if you picked one of those lighter colors to look like the desert, you can skip this step. All right, and just like that, we are all done. We have our Baby Yoda, the child. And I know this was a little bit of a harder one. I'm starting to make these a little bit more challenging every week because I know you guys are more than capable. I've seen a lot of pictures of all of your work from the past few weeks, and you've all been doing such an amazing job. If you'd like to share some pictures of your Mandalorian, the child, please feel free to share them to our Facebook page. We would love to see. Thank you guys so much for painting along with me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.